Thank you, Mr. Grubb.
Dana Grubb, 2420 Henderson Place. I just want to follow up on what the last speaker mentioned. You know, some people seem to think that when you move into a neighborhood, you make that decision to move in knowing that certain conditions existed, and that's very unfair. You know, people who buy a home for a lot of different reasons, and certain conditions did exist, but that shouldn't be lauded over somebody who makes that type of investment in our community and that decision to reside in our community. Just a couple comments on the points of discussion earlier. Councilman Maurer, there are a lot of knuckleheads riding around in this city still using their cell phones. They haven't gotten the message. Mr. Rodriguez spoke about traffic lights on the south side. I sat for 15 minutes on South New Street between 3rd and 4th last Friday night. Something's not right over there. And I'm not talking the construction. I'm talking the times on the signals. I mean, it's just insane. As far as the personal use of city vehicles, I've sounded like a broken record for the last 5 years getting up here and raising that issue. I think it's time, particularly in light of the city controller, identifying that as a specific cost issue and estimating that it costs Bethlehem taxpayers $100,000 a year. PPL, UGI workers who are on call, they drive to their place of work, pick up their vehicles, and then go do their business. And I think it's about time that happened in City Hall. As far as the preservation study, how Martin Tower can be on the top tier and the former corporate headquarters on East 3rd Street be a maybe on the 4th tier is beyond me. My grandfather was the head custodian in that building. I remember going in there at Christmas as a young boy. The stainless steel, the marble, the decorations, the exhibits of many of the projects, the ships, the buildings, the bridges that Bethlehem Steel had built. That's where the history of Bethlehem Steel is. And there is no way on this planet that Martin Tower deserves the kind of recognition it is getting, other than to provide for tax credit to rehabilitate that property. It makes absolutely no sense. I have a statement I'd like to make, and it concerns your vote earlier this evening. Council made a strong statement about lying and honesty and the expectations in the conduct of government business that this honorable trait should be the rule, not the exception. I would suggest that your work is not finished. Now you need to impose the same kind of manners on the city administration when it comes to the finances and budgets of city government. Lies are lies. Do something about all of them and put an end to the double standards that have become pervasive inside of City Hall. I think you've witnessed through some of the budget process the deception, the manipulation of city finances to the advantage of I'm not quite sure what. But it's time that the taxpayers and the residents of this community receive fair and honest treatment from their government. And given the city's current financial state, I strongly suggest that as this budget process continues, that you need to ensure that everything that is budgeted and spent on what it needs to be. That when money is borrowed for one purpose, it is not used for another without your permission. That when you don't approve pay increases for employees and pay increases are given, that this needs to be reined in. You ultimately have that responsibility and that authority as elected representatives. And I think it's about time you take that step and use it so that the taxpayers in this community and the residents in this community don't end up paying for those mistakes for the next 20 or 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Bill Tomino, 1037 Main Street, Bethlehem. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but they got the best of me. There is some real exciting news, at least on the north side of town. Moravian Colleges, my information tells me, is moving their food court from where it currently exists across Laurel Street on the corner of Monocacy and Laurel. They just tore down a house at 1029 Monocacy Street, and it looks real good. They're going to move their, I guess the students are already calling it Food Court 2, so I imagine they're going to be doing that. They've been doing a lot of surveying in the area also. Also excited, I think, possibly this spring, if not next spring, they'll be moving the island that currently exists down by Elizabeth Avenue up to the corner of Main and Laurel, which I'm really looking forward to. And quite possibly, probably by, I would say, 2012, they'll probably take down those buildings on Main and Laurel and begin construction of the new chemistry building. So I'm really looking forward to that. Just a small comment on the Elias issue. I think with the state of the economy, that I think anybody reasonably is looking to expand a business that has been there for a long time, I could support this and do support this. And I was away over Thanksgiving. I was in New Mexico, so I couldn't attend the 29th meeting. Some people were glad I wasn't there, but that's okay. No, I just think this, the zoning board really needs to be commended, and its chairman, for the one zoning board meeting that I did attend concerning the Elias debate on zoning. He did a fabulous job. He really did. He maintained control, he maintained his composure, kept the lawyers in line, and really proceeded with real true professionalism. And I can really respect that. Other than that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burns.
My name is Al Burdick, 1004 Johnston Drive, New Bethlehem. I want to thank Mr. Tomino for setting the stage for my comments. Basically, I wrote a whole lot here, but I think it's probably better if I just kind of like tell the story. I'm going to start this way. I would like to ask City Council to do two things. One is I would like to ask for your continued support with regard to the residents up in that area around Elias, who would like to live in their homes in peace and harmony. We would very much appreciate your continued support with Mr. Spadoni's assistance. That's number one. And number two, I would ask you to appoint a liaison to monitor on behalf of City Council every future zoning hearing board meeting in order to protect the residents of Bethlehem. Now just let me give you a little backdrop. So that's what I'm asking for, okay? August the 26th, 2009, and just before that we saw a public notice in the paper, and I got a phone call about an expansion at Elias. I was opposed to the expansion right off the bat because it's right up the street from where I live. But I really didn't know the zoning law. So I just went down with 4, 5, 6 other neighbors to listen to what was going on. We didn't know enough to go down to the zoning office and check out the site plans and see what was really coming. So we sat through the meeting, and I like to think of it now, after all this time, as the lambs were brought to slaughter, because we walked in, Mr. Thompson said it was basically people's court. You know, there were not strict rules about evidence. You say your piece, the other party says their piece, and then the zoning hearing board decides who's credible, who's a credible witness and who was not. So all the comments I made that night were basically just because I read the appeal and made comments about the size that the market was going to become. All right, subsequent to that, I had an opportunity to take a look in detail at all the zoning records and found out that there was a law. The law said that if you are a non-conforming use, that you can expand up to 50% of whatever you were when that law went into effect. Well, that law went into effect in 1970. Well, there was no record as to how big Elias Supermarket was in 1970, but there was a record, and it was in 1976, that Elias Supermarket was judged to be about 6,000 feet, a few feet less than that. And that came because, under duress of cross-examination, the zoning officer begrudgingly admitted that it was 5,698 feet. Now, if you multiply that by 150%, you come up with about 8,400 feet. Elias was already 11,067 feet.